Hello everybody, this is Kai Marin, and you better get the iodine pills ready because I've got some nuclear level cringe for you guys today. So anyways, we're going to be talking about LN Historian, light novel historian. And this guy, for quite some time, has just been dropping the most brain dead takes on Twitter you could ever see. Whenever I see this guy, it's always shocking how retarded it is. But anyways, we'll go into some background. So this is LN Historian, right? Light novel historian. Okay, and I find this very interesting, okay, because his entire YouTube channel is mostly just him talking about Lord of Mysteries. And if you never heard of Lord of Mysteries, I mean, that would make sense. You know, here's another post of him glazing it. Because Lord of Mysteries is a Chinese web novel. Okay? So this guy's he calls himself light novel historian, but his whole channel is him glazing a Chinese web novel. Very interesting. And this guy wonders why people call him a tourist. You know, this would be like if I made a channel called Anime Fan 420, and then half my content was talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Anyways, though, he's got some other stuff on here. I thought I had some other stuff lined up, but anyways, though, we'll just go through this stuff. He's a total lefty, and he also is just a total tourist, too. You know, even though he calls himself light novel historian, he doesn't actually... He really hates anime, you know, and he demands that it changes because he has issues with certain aspects of it. You know, particularly lollies, other more politically incorrect things. But let's go through this. His first garbage take. All right, and this is in response to someone saying only the Japanese has the right to think that way, tourist. And one of the issues I kind of have, let's see, how many likes did this get? 8. So he's responding to a post, so he's responding to someone who got 8 likes, okay, making a whole ass video. And this is something you'll see these kinds of people do. You can't really call this straw man because someone else said it, but they'll find literally the most bottom of the barrel retarded argument they can, and then respond to that, and then act like they've responded to everybody. All right, which it's just so, it's so stupid and dishonest, you know? Anyways, though, so let's just get into this.
I am so tired of constantly hearing this ridiculous take that you're not allowed to criticize anime unless you're
You know, it's funny. I don't think he did intentionally, but he covered how many likes it got.
Japanese. Because for a moment, let's take this line of thinking to its logical conclusion.
Anyways, I guess I'll say this first. You know, you can't criticize anime unless you're Japanese. What people normally mean when they say this is that ultimately it's sort of about target audiences. So, anyways, so the whole thing you have to, you know, the thing you have to keep in mind when you watch any kind of art that's foreign to you, whether it's old or from another country, is that you need to adjust your expectations, you know? You know, because if something isn't made for you, then, I mean, it's not really, you know, if you're not the target audience, there's going to be some kind of hurdle there, right? Like, for example, Shakespeare. Shakespeare's very hard to read as, like, you know, just a modern average Joe. And you could say criticize how it's written or whatever, but it's kind of useless because you don't even actually really understand the language it's written in, get what I mean? So any criticisms you have of it are pretty much invalid because you aren't even really capable of understanding and appreciating the work itself. And anime is much the same way because a lot of it is produced for, say, especially the ones this guy complains about, are produced for otakus, and he's not an otaku, he's not an actual anime fan, but let's have him continue for now.
This is like saying, well, you're not American, you can't criticize Hollywood.
See, that doesn't really fly because Hollywood pretty explicitly produces films for an international audience. So if the film is produced with you in mind, you do have a right to actually criticize it. What would be more apt is saying that you're not allowed to criticize Bollywood movies unless you're Indian. And I mean, look, that's kind of true. I'm sure if I watched a Bollywood movie, I would hate it. All right, but I mean, the Indians love it, and they're the target audience. So, I mean, do I have a right to dictate what art they should be consuming or not?
What, you don't like something about Star Wars, Marvel, Disney? Sorry, your opinion doesn't count because you're not American.
Yeah, like I said, all those properties are produced for an international audience, so it's different.
Or imagine saying you can't point out problems in the K-pop industry unless you're South Korean.
And that's also just completely different because, I mean, for one thing, it kind of isn't your business because you aren't South Korean, but at the same time, that's different from criticizing art. Criticizing, I guess, I don't know, immoral things about, say, the production or whatever. I don't know much about K-pop, but I mean, there's been scandals, right? You know, that's just a different thing entirely. It'd be like if you went to, like, a factory, and then this factory was literally using human slaves. I mean, you would be allowed, even if this factory was in, I don't know, whatever random country, I mean, that's still a human rights violation.
Or that you're not allowed to complain about game balance in League, Overwatch, Valorant, Fortnite, or whatever other game unless you're from their origin country.
See, now what would be apt is that you wouldn't be allowed to complain about game balance in a game that you don't play. Alright? And for guys like this, they complain about aspects of shows they don't like, or shows that aren't made for them. So honestly, yeah, you actually shouldn't be allowed to criticize game balance in games you don't play, in games that aren't marketed towards you. You have to be an actual player to criticize games, as you should be an otaku to criticize anime.
Do you see how ridiculous this sounds? Nobody applies this standard to any other medium, but suddenly when it comes...
Except they do. Like I said, if you don't play Fortnite and you go into a Fortnite community and start complaining about shit, they're gonna tell you to fuck off. You know what I mean? If you start complaining about Shakespeare, and you don't know jack shit about Shakespeare, like, they're gonna tell you to fuck off.
Comes to Japanese media specifically, it's treated like some sacred, flawless thing that has to be protected from evil tourists at all costs. You guys need to stop putting Japan on a pedestal. It's a normal country like any other. And don't get me wrong, I love Japan and its culture.
Yeah, that's a lie.
I've been watching anime most of my life. I was even living in Japan for half a year. I love the country. But at the same time, I can recognize there are issues in Japan and in anime that are worth talking about. Loving something doesn't mean ignoring its flaws. It means caring enough to want it to be better.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing. And you'll see this from so many of these types. I always find it kind of shocking. They're like, oh, I love Japan so much, but here's 110 things that need to change about the country. Alright, and I definitely have a right to say this because, you know, whatever. Like, nigga, you're like a fucking... Nigga, you're a Pajit. Alright? I don't care if you lived in Japan for 10 years. You're not Japanese, alright? So we'll end that there. And actually, here's an example of this kind of thing happening in the games industry before. You might remember this from a few years back. But there was a... See, here, Dark Souls 3 badly needs an easy mode. Dark Souls should have an easy mode. Here's why. An easy mode has never ruined a game. You know, a few years back, a lot of these game journalist types were demanding that these Souls-likes add in easy modes because these game journos suck ass and they're bad at games. But the whole thing is that Dark Souls games are supposed to be hard. That's a core part of the experience. And if you don't want a hard game, then look, Dark Souls just is not designed for you. It's not for you. And you shouldn't be demanding that it change fundamentally to fit your own tastes. And it's the same thing with anime and tourists, because tourists will complain about aspects of anime that are fundamental and demand that they change. Anyways, though, we'll move on to some other shit. This part's rough, man.
What? He told me One Piece is very political. Yes. What has...
No disrespect to anybody on that podcast, but don't tell me the anime man, the guy who's been calling my mutuals anime tourist, doesn't understand that One Piece is political, when One Piece is probably the single most political piece of fiction ever created.
Yeah, One Piece is the most political piece of fiction ever created! And by the way, Ellen Historian is retweeting this guy. He agrees with this guy, okay? If we're just comparing it to anime, you're telling me that One Piece is more political than Legend of the Galactic Heroes, which is literally a show about authoritarianism versus democracy. You're telling me it's more political than Animal Farm, which is explicitly an allegory for the rise of communism in Russia. You're telling me it's more political than Atlas Shrugged, which is effectively a treatise for a political ideology. More political than Birth of the Nation, which was made to frickin' romanticize the KKK. More political than the Turner Diaries, which is explicitly white nationalist. Are you kidding me? Like, holy crap. And this is the kind of thing you hear from these retards, but let's just keep going.
I'm not even a One Piece glazer like that. I don't even like the series that much compared to Naruto and Bleach. But it's literally just a
Also, favorite anime are fucking like Naruto and Bleach, go figure.
fact. You don't even have to take my word for it. If the series is not political, why is it being used as a symbol globally for rebellion and protest?
Oh my god! Holy shit! Hey guys, did you know that the Nazis were actually Buddhists the whole time? Yo, this is a shocker to me. I don't know. Should I go through the rest of this?
We saw it happen in Indonesia. We saw it happen in Nepal as the political fiction. You mean to tell me that...
Look, anyways, I'll just summarize. I'll just say this right. Look, One Piece is technically political, as in it has politics in its story, but it doesn't have any kind of specific political message. Alright? Definitely not a left-wing one. Or not really a left-wing one. The whole thing is that One Piece is mostly just anti-tyranny. Alright? And even then, if you go through the story, how many monarchies does Luffy restore? Like 4 or 5? Anyways, though, so yeah, like I said, you can say it's political as in it has, as in politics happen in its story, but it's not political in the sense that it says a specific political message. Anti-tyranny is pretty bipartisan. It's a pretty universal belief. Even, you know, even the most far left and far right people, even if their ideologies would hypothetically result in tyranny, you know, they don't believe that that's how it would be. They think the power would be used for good or whatever, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Nobody's pro-tyranny except tyrants. So, you really can't say One Piece is very political. And look, people use the symbol just because it's mostly just because One Piece is popular and it's kind of related. Alright? And One Piece is ridiculously popular. And this, all art is inherently political is something this guy believes in. And I guess I'll talk a bit more about this later. But it really is not very... Like, it's technically true, but also absolutely not true in the way leftists try and say it's true. Anyways, though, there's this part where the fact that the Trash Taste podcast, Giga, Seadog VA, and the Anime Man couldn't immediately recognize that One Piece is deeply political. Are you serious? And by the way, apparently Hasanabe of all fucking people is the only person there who's media literate enough to recognize that One Piece is actually far leftist communist fiction. Yeah, it's fucking bullshit, man. Man, I don't even want to go through that. Anyways, though, so he drops these brain dead takes. Another thing, so we'll talk about this. So he rails hard against lollies and lolicons all the fucking time. So, by the way, you can... So this is what he says in response. By the way, you can oppose censorship in anime while still admitting that some of the stuff people defend is fucking weird and completely unnecessary. I only ever see you guys outraged when someone stops a child from being sexualized. You know, what children are being sexualized in anime? I mean, child, this is the whole thing. It's a drawing, man. So, anyways, though, and then here's warning, actual nuanced take. We'll see how nuanced this really is. Since it seems like some people don't know my stance on this, let me clarify. No, I don't think lolly content is directly harming kids. You could maybe argue indirect effects, though I'm not aware of any studies on that. Honestly, I don't think it should be illegal. Being able to create any art you want is fine. That said, if you're into that stuff, yeah, it's creepy and suspicious, and society has every right to shame you. You can still make it, but that doesn't mean it has to be openly accepted. So yes, screenwriters and studios can tone it down or cut content if they're not comfortable with it. And if you don't like that as an artist, you're free to work with others who are fine with it. So to be clear, you should be free to create whatever you want, but not to deserve of open approval. And look, I'm going to say, he says this is nuanced. But really, what he's saying in a roundabout way is that if you like lollies, you're a pedophile, and that these works shouldn't be made. These works shouldn't be allowed to be produced. Because like I said, he's like, if you're into that stuff, it's creepy and suspicious. Well, why would it be creepy and suspicious if it's, say, not related to pedophilia, right? So like I said, he effectively says, yeah, if you're a lolicon, you're a pedophile. And then he says, yeah, society should be shaming these people, and these studios should be getting pressured into not producing these works. And like I said, you can argue, and like I said, yeah, sexualized mind. Here's more of him like bitching. And look, you could say, so they're seething because they can't openly sexualize minors or be racist, homophobic, and transphobic. Sexualize minors, no minors get sexualized in anime because they're not real. You could literally be Japanese, grow up as a lifelong anime fan, and the second you don't like the sexualization of minors in anime, suddenly you're a tourist. No way these people are serious. It's true, actually. You are a tourist for being so anti-lolly, for calling lolicons pedophiles, for saying that these works shouldn't be produced. Want to know why? Because lollies are a core part of anime culture, of otaku culture. Alright? If you go to N-Hentai and you sort the tags by most popular, oh, look at this. Lolicon is number 6 out of all of these 100,000, over 100,000 works. Okay, lolly is beating all of this crap. Alright, if you go to Pixiv, you type in lolly, and look, lolly's right here. Pretty close to the top. Is getting beat by stuff like Doodle, Beautiful Girl, Virtual YouTuber, Breasts, and then a billion gotcha games. And look, Lolicon, yeah, here it is. Entered use in Japan in the 1970s during the Lolicon boom and erotic manga of the early 80s. So Lolicon has been a part of otaku culture since the early 80s. Literally 40 years. Alright, look, you can disagree with it, but lollies, they're very popular and they're a staple of anime. Whether you like it or not, that's how it is. And if you demand that they be changed, alright, you're being a tourist. What you are, because this is the whole thing about tourists. It's not about how long you've watched anime, or, here, where was it? Look, it's not all about how long you've watched anime, or what anime you've watched, or whatever. A tourist is somebody who enters into a hobby group that they don't even like just because it's trendy. And in the case of anime, these tourists, they come in, alright, they enjoy some safe, non-edgy show like My Hero Academia or Jujutsu Kaisen. They get exposed to some of the edgier stuff, and instead of saying, I'll stay away from that, I'll just stick to the stuff I personally like, they complain about it. Alright, they complain about fan service, they complain about lollies, they complain about, like, even depiction of women sometimes, you see that? And this is what I mean. Because these people, what they want to do is that they don't want to enjoy anime for what it is, the way actual anime fans do. They want to fundamentally change it to be more palatable to them. They want to fundamentally change it to adhere, to their own morals, even though this is foreign art. Alright? And this is the whole thing. And we'll talk about this in a bit. Like, I'm going to be kind of jumping around a little bit, but, yeah, here. We'll talk about this in a bit, but he gets pissed about the anime man using the colonization as an allegory to describe anime tourists, but it's completely apt, because what do tourists do? Alright, what did colonists do IRL, right? They go to a foreign land, they establish political control, for their own benefit. They spread their culture, their religion, whatever. And what do anime tourists do? They enter into a, foreign hobby group, and then they ultimately try and change it. Alright? They try and change it to be more in line with their own values, their own beliefs. Alright? It actually is a very apt comparison. But anyways, though, I had a good tweet about it, but anyway, some of this is pretty bad. Here's him complaining about how, holy hell, I didn't realize just how tight a grip the right-wing grift has on anime's YouTube side. Completely different than Instagram and TikTok. I mean, that's based at least we got at least the real anime. And this is funny. This is why I will never seriously get into visual novels. I swear, there isn't a single normal one out there. Is this guy retarded? There's plenty of normal visual novels. And I mean, what? I guess this is just from random meme. Apparently this is from some visual novel. I haven't played this one. But I mean, from what I can tell, it seems pretty milquetoast. Alright, this guy's talking about this He's talked about the entire medium like every single one's Bible Black or Maggot Bait or something. Although honestly, quite frankly though, I'm glad he's not getting into visual novels, tourist gatekept. I could not handle a VN historian. That would be pretty fucking bad. Oh yeah, this is funny. So his whole channel is glazing a Chinese web novel, and now he's glazing Shadow Slave, which I'm pretty sure is a Western web novel. So he's LN historian, and most of his channel isn't even talking about actual light novels. Anyways, though, this is the positive of anime becoming mainstream massively outweigh the negatives in response to the Crunchyroll CEO, Rahul Parini. Very interesting. Says anime is no longer niche. It's mainstream gigantic. It's now undeniable how big anime has become. The positive anime becoming mainstream massively outweigh the negatives. How? Name even one positive anime becoming mainstream has actually had, because I don't even think there is one. It's like, oh, you can watch all these shows on Crunchyroll. We could watch all these shows before because they got fan subs. And honestly, the fan subs were better. The fan subs were significantly better because they were free and they were of higher quality. Okay, Crunchyroll just has had a scandal about this new way. About apparently there's a new way. The new wave of subtitles on Crunchyroll were just total freaking garbage. All right. I gotta say, fan subs at the very least, okay, were significant. Fan subs were significantly higher quality. You know, one positive you could say is that, oh, you can buy more more physical manga now. I mean, I guess. Except the physical manga you can buy. And look, I like owning physical manga, but the quality of it sucks. The only actual advantage is owning it physically. If you compare, like, JoJo is a great example. Compare the JoJo physical releases to the scanlations. You know, the fan translations are significantly better than what actually got released. And you can see this with anything. Like, he says, oh, positives? Does he say anything in the comments? That's the whole thing. I unironically don't think there's a single positive of anime becoming more mainstream. And I mean, look, the biggest negative is that we have all these fucking tourists policing the entire medium now. Also, here's him. Unfortunately, these four are a symptom of a much larger problem within the anime community. And he's what? The anime community would be so much better if they were not involved. What? These four people, what, actual otakus, are a problem somehow? You know, this is what I mean. This is what I mean with these kinds of these kinds of people, okay? You know, they enter into a foreign, a foreign group, all right, a foreign hobby group, all right? They complain about the people who've been there forever, who actually care about it, the people who actually care, and then they muscle these people out, and then eventually it just dies, and this kind of thing happens quite a bit, actually. And then he's also just accusing everybody who disagrees with him of being racist. Go figure. Man, what else do I got? I guess we'll go through this too.
Let me get this right. You make a political analogy comparing anime tourists and colonization, and
a very apt one, I might add.
when I call you out on said political analogy, you tell me I'm too political and need to go outside. Alright, bro. To clarify,
I guess I don't have the original video, but this guy like fucking crashed out at the Anime Man over this. He was like, how dare you use colonialism as an allegory? Are you just freaking cheapening all those millions and millions and millions of deaths? Shit.
clarify my point in your part of the video, all I was saying is that I find it embarrassing how some anime fans act like victims whenever new people, let's call them normies, join the community. I'm not saying you're one of the extreme voices. In fact, I thought you were pretty light. My only issue was the comparison. As a major figure in the community, you're almost normalizing this analogy, and in doing so, giving more ammo to these extreme fans. If you
these extreme fans who just actually care about anime and actually like it, unlike you, who much prefers Chinese slop.
If you've been paying attention recently, you would have noticed the community has gotten pretty extreme and reactionary. Just look at the controversy with Bocchi the Rock that's happening right now.
Yeah, I remember this. Bocchi the Rock, that situation was brutal. I never made a video about it, but basically, like, the animation director or the head script writer was a rabid feminist who was straight up just censoring the series.
Now, I find often that the term anime tourist is at the center of all of this. Honestly, it's starting to feel a lot like the pipeline we saw in the gaming community back in the late 2010s.
Oh, this is a good sign. I guess he's talking about how the gaming community got more political, more reactionary, because wokeness just got completely out of fucking control.
I don't think you're personally...
You know, it's so weird. He admits that this stuff is, like, happens as a reaction to something. As a reaction to what exactly? Oh no, we didn't do nothing. We didn't do nothing. Shit.
Pushing this rhetoric, but I included your analogy in my last video because it truly reflects how these anti-tourists see themselves. And also, side note about the two political parts, I don't think you can separate art and politics, and anime is no exception. Politics is an inherent aspect of art itself, so in response to your comment saying,
it's not that deep. May I remind you, we are literally talking about Japanese cartoons. It's really not.
It in fact is that deep.
See, this guy's retarded. This is one of the things I hate about leftists. Because this shit is just so pedantic and retarded. Look, technically it's true. All art is technically political. But not in the way they really think, or in the way anybody actually talks about it, okay? Art is political in the sense as any piece of art is going to have some kind of theme, you know, a moral message, alright? And the whole thing is, because politics is so broad, politics is literally just, you know, the system of governing society. So any moral statement, no matter what, can technically be a political statement. Even something like stealing is bad, or murder is wrong. Those are technically political statements, all right? But this is not what people talk about when they say anime isn't political. Anime isn't political in the sense that it doesn't push any partisan politics. It doesn't really push any contemporary politics. And the messages they do have are usually pretty broad, you know? Like I say One Piece earlier, One Piece is basically just anti-tyranny. It's not some, like, socialist allegory or something. And basically most shows have this kind of thing. And most works in general, you know, have this kind of approach to it. But, you know, if you're a leftist, if you're a terminally online leftist, alright, brownoid, you somehow think that every piece of media is secretly like a far-left socialist piece of queer fiction. And if you disagree with me, you're just media illiterate. Oh yeah, this one's pretty good. That's a classic. Anyways, this was a response to that. Why do gamers have a problem with politics in video games all of a sudden when games have had political themes for decades? Using political themes to tell a story is not the same fucking thing as shoehorning in contemporary politics to push an agenda. Very true. Oh yeah, also the... shit. Yeah, so here's Chibi Reviews being based, talking about how much he likes incest in anime, and Ellen Historian, I disagree, he isn't a grifter, but honestly, I think Chibi Reviews actually believes in what he says, which makes it even worse. And by the way, this is what I mean, okay? You don't have to like, say, incest in anime, alright? You don't have to like lollies, or fan service, or incest. But the whole thing is that these are still parts of otaku culture, and these are things that people do enjoy. You go back to the hentai tags, incest is at the top of the second column. Incest is more popular than MILFs, more popular than fudas, more popular than NTR. Like, it's more popular than a lot of friggin' crap. It's not exactly like it's some niche thing, and you see this in the West too. Okay, go on like a Western porn site, there's incest on there. Alright? Game of Thrones is another good example. Dune, weirdly enough, has it too. I mean, there's definitely an interest in it. And like I said, this ultimately just is a part of anime culture. There are some very popular shows. Frick. I got too many tabs, man. I thought I had Ori Emo somewhere. Oh, yeah, it was the next fucking tab. Okay. That was a bit of a retard moment, but... Anyways, though, Ori Emo... In total, the series has has sold 5 million books, alright? And then there's the 2 successful anime seasons, there's the game. Like, Ori Emo is very popular. Even to this day, it's still pretty popular. That wouldn't be the case if incest was just this super disgusting thing well, it is disgusting. But if nobody liked it, alright, if nobody liked incest in fiction, then obviously Orihime wouldn't have had the success that it's had. And look, I don't want to get into a big moral debate. My whole point is that this is something that ultimately you can disagree with the genre, you can not like it, that's fine. But this is just a staple of anime. This is something that a lot of otakus like, which is why it shows up in shows. Alright, it's really just that simple, alright? And look, by this guy coming in and being like, oh, this is so disgusting, we can't have any of this anymore. Like I said, you're a tourist, you're acting like a colonizer going into this foreign interest group and demanding it change to meet your standards, alright? You know, criticizing this foreign art, demanding it meets your Western, Westoid standards. Anyways, though, so this guy calls himself light novel historian. Fun fact, did you know that one of the reasons why we got all these light novels with these super long, ridiculous titles is because of Orihime? Alright, this series actually popularized that trope of having these super long sentence titles, which is actually pretty funny when you think about it. Anyways, though, that's about it for me. One thing I forgot to mention, also, like I said, Lolicon, popular since the early 80s. By the way, in the original Dragon Ball series, which people like using Goku in their anti-fan service, anti-lolly memes, this is what Chi-Chi looked like in the original series, literally a lolly in bikini armor. You can't get much more on the nose than that. Man, how long has this guy's channel even been around? 2014, how long has he made videos? For 2 years! This guy's been making videos for 2 years. And holy shit, all his original videos are all about fucking Lord of Mysteries too. What the hell is wrong with this guy? That's the whole thing, is this guy even an anime fan? I mean, your entire channel is talking about Lord of Mysteries. What the hell? Holy shit, this video's 32 minutes? Oh my god. Oh, whatever. Anyways, though, that's about it for me, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more content in the future. And goodbye.